cochlear implant. And I just I'm going to have him come up and his people, Marlene and Al Suffredini, I guess, and Nancy Meyer. We're looking forward to hearing about your group. And one thing while they're coming up, I didn't mention the national convention, I believe, is in Phoenix, Arizona this year. It's in June, the end of June. I don't have the exact dates, but it's all in the newsletter or in, we'll be letting you know. I believe it's in the newsletter. Please read the newsletter because there's lots of good information there. So while they're setting up, does anybody have anything else? Announcements or anything? I hope you all had a nice holiday and Happy New Year to everybody. An extra mic. Good morning, Pete. I'll let you start.
Thanks. Good morning. So when hearing aids are no longer working for you, cochlear implants are often the next step in terms of able to hear.
Does this seem okay, sir?
Yeah, that's, I just can't remember telling me.
Friends, Nancy Meyer, Marlene Sutliff, Suffredini, you know them. I'm Pete Fackler. We're members of Hearing Loss Association of America, Rochester, of course. And perhaps we're borrowing a bit of a page out of the Hope Sessions book, in the sense that our format will be that Nancy and Marlene will lead off, talk about their decision to go with cochlear implants and how that worked and what led them to that. They'll go first because they are relatively recent.
Okay.
And then Al Suffredini will talk, and Al is a longtime user of cochlear implants, so he will bring a longer term perspective. So we're kind of thinking we talk 10 minutes each. We don't have an hourglass to time that, but that's kind of our sense. And if it's okay with you, we'd like to not have questions interrupting's not the word, but we'd like to hold questions until the three panelists have had a chance to talk. So if you have comments or questions, if you'd make notes, and then it's just going to be kind of a pass the mic with questions and comments. I think this is the first time we've done something like this here, and our hope is that if you've been thinking about cochlear implants, maybe you'll hearing some of the comments and experiences will help you on that. And if you're just interested, that maybe you'll learn something that you didn't know. So with that, I'll ask Nancy Meyer to lead off for us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Pete, for organizing this panel. I also am hoping that with our experiences, we can encourage others to follow this journey. Okay, can you hear it? Right. My hearing loss began with Meniere's disease, which, as you probably know, is a fluid imbalance in the inner ear. Very often it causes vertigo, which is a terrible experience. If you've never had it, you never want to have it. It's feeling that the room is spinning around you when you have no control. I went on like this for a while, and finally Dr. Dutcher put what is called an endolymphatic stent in my inner ear. And the purpose of that was to drain some of the fluid and cut down on the vertigo, which it did. I still was losing hearing, and because of the vertigo, that was my incentive to retire from my job as an elementary school secretary, where I dealt with teachers and students and parents, and it's very difficult if you can't hear them. So anyway, my hearing continued to decline. I had 2 episodes of sudden hearing loss, which the first one was rectified with prednisone. Second one was not. And that's when we started thinking about a cochlear implant. It took me quite a while to come to the decision, but I feel it's the best thing that I ever did for my health and for my sanity. So, I was implanted on, October 4th of 2021 and activated on November 5th, 2021. It's in the right side, and I have a resound hearing aid in my left ear. For that month of healing, I used only my hearing aid, so I was kind of lopsided. But once it was activated, it was absolutely wonderful. Doug was in the room with me, and the audiologist said, just say something and see if she can understand a few words. So he said a sentence. I don't remember what it was now, something about John Deere, of course. He's a farmer. And I heard every word. It was fantastic. I never expected that kind of a result. I was told by several people, Al for one, who said, you will hear better. And Fred Altrust, who encouraged me a great deal along the way. And so glad I listened to them. What I had was single-sided hearing loss. My left ear is at about 60%, so I wouldn't qualify for an implant on that side and didn't need it. The hearing aid does very well there. But because the criteria for qualification has eased up, I was able to get the implant. I think before that time, a person had to have pretty bad hearing in both ears in order to qualify for it. So I'm very grateful for that situation. The brand I went with was Cochlear Americas. Feel that that's a very good brand. They've been in the business, I think, the longest of any of the manufacturers. There's Advanced Bionics are the other 2 major manufacturers. I've been very happy with Cochlear. And one thing that has helped me a great deal is an app called Cochlear Co-Pilot. And it consists of a lot of activities and practice with listening and understanding. So that was a definite advantage to go with Cochlear. I think the other companies probably have a similar app, but I have been very happy with this. Yes, that's about what I would want to tell you. I hope I can encourage anyone, if you're thinking about it, if your hearing is at the point where it's a real problem and the hearing aids are just not doing it, at least go to your audiology expert, your audiologist, and be tested and see if you do qualify.
Thank you, Nancy. Next up is Marlene Sutliff.
Hi, everyone. Well, I've had my cochlear implant about 3 years. Next week, it'll be 3 years. I absolutely love it. I can't have it back. I had brain surgery like 2001, And I lost my hearing to the point where I noticed, maybe other people noticed, but they didn't mention it. I noticed about 2006. And so I, one hearing aid really wasn't enough. So I got 2 hearing aids, and then it continued to decline. And by about 2010, 2011, I had no hearing at all in my right ear. So I struggled long with the hearing aid in my left ear. I had some additional brain issues. I had 2 more bubbles in my brain, and so it limited what the exams I could have. And I was having MRIs, so that meant I couldn't have a cochlear implant. At that time, they did not have the wires that could withstand, or the magnets that could withstand the MRI. So I became increasingly isolated. I stopped doing things. It was just too difficult because my left ear had maximum 50% hearing. And so that meant out of 100 words, I was not getting the subject of a sentence or a paragraph, and it was too much to deal with. So then we had the pandemic. That I didn't have to make an excuse for isolation because everybody was. Anyway, I did have finally the cochlear implant. I decided if I have 5 minutes to live or 20 years, I want to hear what's happening. And it's okay if it's for a few years or whatever. I want to hear what's happening. So I went to Dr. Deutscher and he operated, and 3 weeks later, they put the processor on. I heard instantly. And I'm now at about 93% of speech recognition with the cochlear implant. And at that time, I was in the 80s initially, which really surprised me. I was thrilled. Yeah. The recovery from the surgery, it's not brain surgery. Really, the wires are inserted through the mastoid and then under the scalp. So it's not going into the depth of the brain. And I've heard other people have concerns about that. So anyway, I'm just going along with my cochlear implant. I don't want it ever to go away. I have a hearing aid in my left ear, but I'm thrilled to have this.
Good job. Thank you, Marlene. We'll pass the mic now to Al Suffredini.
Good afternoon. My story is long, but I'll try to keep it as concise as possible. Yeah. I really like to be able to hear. And as Voltaire would say, the ear is the avenue to the heart. But I lost my hearing through Meniere's disease. It's something that is not hereditary. None of my family has hearing loss. I listen to music. I play the various amount of instruments. I lost all those for 10 years. Between 35 and 40, I lost all my hearing. I could hear at 120 plus decibels. They fitted me with a crossover and then with 2 individual hearing aids. But it didn't do anything. In the mid-80s, I went possibly to have a cochlear implant, and the standards were high, the criteria was high, and I was refused. I went to another facility and I told them that I was refused in another one because I never lied to anybody. And they said they didn't care. They gave me a thorough test and they accepted me. However, my insurance would only pay to the nearest CI center, which was 32 miles from my home. The other one was 67. So because of that, I lost my job at 40 and I became disabled. However, in 1993, I was accepted into Strong Memorial Program and I was implanted with a body type Spectra cochlear implant. You was a body type, put it in your pocket or on your belt. And I heard excellent. I was able to play my instruments. I was able to hear music, talk on the phone without any device. However, 19 years later, the electrodes in the cochlea died. So I had about 18 channels. I was hearing about 8. So they said you need a new implant. In order to put it in the right ear, they can get the electrode out, but because of scar tissue, they may not be able to get the thing in there. And if they can't, that ear is dead forever. So they had to apply for 2 surgeries. I said, just put it in the left ear. So they did. And they put an N7 in my left ear, and I hear 1,000 times better than the last one. I don't need caption. I talk on the phone with a regular, with no apparatus. I can hear in the bar with loud music. I can hear the radio in the car. I can play my instruments. I can hear music. So I'm very, very, very happy. And I was one of the first to get a CI here. And because of how I did, a lot of other people got CIs as well and did well with them. So that is my story. And but I just want you to know that if you do consider getting the CI, you will do very, very well. But the most important part in the CI is when they're giving you the channels. You have a high and low, and you want to get that perfect, but it'll take time. It usually takes a year for me, but I think you'll do very well with it.
Have time, so talk a little
Uh,
bit, my experience. Thank you, Al. So you're hearing different things. 2 people with Meniere's disease triggering it. And then Marlene's situation was different. Mine was different still. I started losing my hearing at age 42. When guy I worked for said, you know, you don't hear too well. And I did hearing aids for about 15 years, at which point the hearing aids were no longer giving me enough. And so I quit work. At age 57, I figured I can't do this anymore. And I was also, turns out, losing my marriage at about the same time. I still haven't gone there to think about how much my hearing loss played in that. I can't go there yet. So I did implants. I was implanted on the left side in 2004 and on the right side in 2009. I would echo what the panelists said that I don't know where I would not be here. I would not be in this group if I hadn't done the implants. I, I, I couldn't hear it to socialize. So in a very real sense that I think the technology has saved my life. When I get a new doctor says, well, what do you think about your health? And I said, well, the biggest issue is hearing loss. And I've got stents in here. I've got other stuff, going on. They look at me and I say, yeah, because the hearing loss drives everything in terms of the way we live and the ability to have life be worthwhile. So I'm kind of the luckiest guy in the world, I guess. Um, I think with the cochlear implants, I think maybe we'll talk a little bit more about surgery because some people are nervous about the surgery intervention. So I'll mention that. My work was done in New York City because I was seeing an MD in New York City. He referred me to New York Eye and Ear, which is the smaller of the two clinics in New York, NYU being the one that really dominates the trade there. And the surgeries were non-event. They put me under, I woke up, I came home. I mean, it was just, there was nothing untoward that happened from the surgeries. It was really very straightforward. I would add one other thing about cochlear implants, and then we'll open the floor for questions for the panel. In my experience, Al went 19 years and then the electrodes conked out and he had a successful re-implant. I know, I think one other person, I'm sure there are more, but Wayne Reuter from New Jersey, long time Hearing Loss Association activist, I think had a re-implant too, or maybe even two. But um, in my experience is this technology is unbelievably reliable. I mean, I get up in the morning, I throw these things on my head, and I can hear. And you take them off at night, as if you're using disposable batteries, you need to have the batteries there. If they're rechargeable, you need to recharge them at night. But it's, when you think about it, it's really kind of amazing how reliable the technology is, much like hearing aids are reliable devices. So I think with that, we should we have a mic up here, and then I guess we need a way to pass them. Maybe I'll be the mic passer. So questions and comments, the panel's here to answer your questions, and so let her rip. Who has? Oh, okay. Okay, good. So the drill is, if you have questions for the panel, if you'd come up. Charlie, is that right, do you think? Okay. And then the panel will talk. So.
Yes, I'm coming. Oh, I'm coming through. These are comments rather than questions. Al inspired me to have my first cochlear implant done here in Rochester. That was in 1998. It is still puttering along. It is absolutely primordial. But it worked, and people ask all the time, well, how long is your
Uh,
good?
I'm trying to get myself unmuted here.
And back in the day, we were pioneers.
Right there,
We were
but
guinea,
now I can't.
and addition, okay, so what these folks, especially the two ladies, underwent was much simpler, much faster than what Al and I, and, what is your name? I've not seen this lady in years, but she is also a long time patient.
Now,
And,
a problem I had just a
our criteria were much stricter. June, wait, 20 years, good for you. And, okay, we had to be a lot deafer, to even be considered for an implant. You guys have got it easy. And it's much
Yep.
faster. They shaved half my head. No way. Now they do a little incision like this on the side of your head. People have also said, but if I had this procedure done, it will take away all the hearing that I have left. Well, how much hearing do you have left? Diddly squat. You have,
Pete, can you hear
you
me?
are even thinking about a cochlear implant. You are not in all that great shape. So, it might very definitely be worth your considering it, but also talking to other people, going to the HLA convention if you can, because you can meet reps from all three manufacturers. You can talk to many people, most of whom I would say practically all have had positive experiences. So, oh, and I got a second implant in 2012. So, many of us are bilateral, and this happened. We never did figure out why I started losing my hearing in my 20s and down the chart like this. We think it's a family type thing. Whatever. If you think it might benefit you, then at least consider going for it.
I have a feeling Fred Altry is trying to say something. We
Yes,
have not seen Fred in
that's
so
correct. Give
long.
me a chance to put them up on the
Oh.
screen. Hang on a second. Go ahead, Fred. You can unmute if you'd like to say something.
Pete, can you hear me now? Pete, can you hear me?
Yes, Fred, you're coming across. We can hear you.
Okay,
Clear.
but
Happy
I'm
New Year.
doing something different this time. Is this the regular meeting now, or is this the meeting for the people that have the cochlear implant? I thought I was on the one for the meeting that is scheduled for today. This is the first. I'm using somebody else's computer here at the hospital in Batavia where I'm located, and I'm having trouble with their pad. I don't have my computer here from home. But I'm just want to say something to everybody while I can. I appreciate all the messages and cards that I have received for the Christmas, New Year's, and everything in between. It's really been a great pleasure that I can see and hear somebody again. And as I say, Pete, I don't know if this is the daytime meeting that I'm talking to, or if this is the Fackler meeting that's scheduled for Thursday.
Fred, this is Charlie. Can you
Yeah,
hear?
Charlie, I'm having a problem. I need your help.
You're at our daytime meeting and we can see and hear you clearly.
Okay. Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure I was on the daytime meeting. As I see, this is the first time that I've been able to get online, and the girl here is doing her best. First, I had trouble. I could only see the chair that was in front of me, but now I have this ugly, shaveless beard viewing at you. But again, I just want to thank everybody for everything that I received for the holidays and all the time. I'm located at the VA Medical Center in Batavia. I'm doing fine. I've been through various therapies and so on. I still have trouble walking, but we're getting there. So whether or not I'll be able to get to a meeting someday, that's another question. The question, I just got to get better. So I'm waiting for springtime to come so I can get to my daughters again and get out on the boat fishing. Go ahead. Can you hear me now, Steve? Charlie?
Yes, thank you, Fred.
Okay. As long as you can hear me, Charlie, I'll just hang on right here and try to view the rest of the meeting the best I can.
Thanks, Fred. The E&O meeting you'll be sent an invite is this coming Thursday at 1 o'clock.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna see if I can do it again with this girl here at the hospital. I'm using her iPad and I'm not used to how it works. I'm used to having my one from home, but here I'm limited as to my space, so I'm doing the best with what I have here.
You're doing great, Fred. Thank you very much. I'm going to mute you, but you should still be able to hear.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Steve.
This is Carolyn Odio, and I'm on Zoom, and I have a question. So would you put me in line?
Go ahead. We have
Okay,
audio on. I'll try to get her up if you want to respond, Pete.
Don't know what
Okay.
the question is.
I haven't asked it yet. I was getting permission to ask it.
Sure.
There
go,
was
and we'd like to
somebody,
Hear from you.
okay, there was somebody who mentioned channels, and it was really important to get the channels right. Does that mean frequencies? I didn't know what channels meant.
Yes, when you get a cochlear implant, they give you a test with a high bass and a tremble. And you have to keep it at the same volume. And this is the problem because tremble to me was louder than bass. And I messed it up terrible until I got it to the point where the bass and the tremble was the same volume. And when you do that, you are going to hear excellent. And One other thing I did was I listened to classical and jazz and flat picking music, and I listened to a flute, one instrument in a band, and I listened to it through the whole piece for a number of days. So I would get the pitches. And I think that helped because I can tune my instruments without any device. Where before I couldn't tell a flat from a sharp. So, but it's very important to get that down.
So the channels refer to music,
I
the
think
music part of this, not to talking, right?
Yeah, it's called the mapping. And you
Oh,
have,
mapping.
yeah, and you have to get that mapping perfect. And
Okay.
if you don't, you're gonna have trouble.
Thank you.
maybe it would be helpful. We haven't really touched on what happens when we're first activated. Um, we didn't hear perfectly when we were first activated, right? So describe if the panel would talk a little bit about what's the work that a new CI recipient has to go through to get better at hearing. Would you talk?
That's what the Cochlear Copilot helps with, that app. There are exercises dealing with music, others with speech. And it's practice. I still do not hear music well. If it's something that I know from the past, I think my brain remembers it, so I know what to expect. But if it's something that I haven't heard before, it's a real struggle. I think if I worked at it a little harder, I probably could get that better. I do have a music program on my CI and my hearing aid, and sometimes in church I will turn both of those on, and that is quite helpful. One thing I did want to mention about my story is that I started with Meniere's disease in my right ear, and it normally does not travel to the other ear, but it did. And so that's why my hearing in my left ear was affected, but not as seriously as the right ear. Since the activation, I have had not a whisper of vertigo. So I'm very pleased with that.
I haven't used any of the apps to help me hear better because instantly I was 87%. I went home and I just took my hearing aid out and listened with my cochlear implant. And as I said, I'm about 93% now. I'm stunned. I don't expect to ever get to 100%. I probably was never at 100% other than when I was 8 years old. But eh, uh, I will use the apps if I get to the point where I think I want to hear something particular that I'm not hearing. But for me, it has just come so beautifully. I really, the whole rest of the activation day, I cried and I sang to myself and I absolutely loved it. So I'm happy with where I am.
Fred Eltreth has always been an advocate for technological devices. And one thing that comes with the CI from Cochlear Americas is called a mini mic. And I know Fred used this a lot when he was in the hospital. It's a direct communication between you and the person you're speaking with by Bluetooth. It goes directly into your CI, so it's very clear. There are a number of devices that Charlie can show you at the demo center that work just as well. talking about numbers, Janet said that she didn't have much hearing left, and so she wasn't concerned about losing it. I too was in that situation. I think I tested at less than 10% in that ear. No, so I didn't think I had much to lose. And I did lose it because when I take this out, I'm totally deaf on that side. But it is such an advantage that it's worth it.
One of the things that strikes me as I listen here is that, speaking about myself now, my experience, I am lazy where pushing the envelope is concerned with the technologies. So I don't work at it as hard as I should. Fred Eltreeth mentioned Copilot here a year ago. I wrote that down, found out what it was, and I didn't do anything. And I would say I'm not at 93% speech discrimination. I have, as we sit here, I have a house full of family with my family from Dallas, my son, his wife, and 3 children, ages, I actually know their ages because I looked it up, 11, 9, and going on 5. And, you know, that's a lot of activity when you're an old guy and you're accustomed to a house that you've had as your own. Well, suddenly it's not my own anymore. It's wonderful. But I don't understand a lot of what people are saying to me right now with this family in the house. And I think some of that is I'm just too lazy. So I've succeeded with Nancy's help in identifying a new audiologist, one who's here versus New York City, because I've been traveling to New York to get my software worked on, mappings, I'll call it. And so I think when I see her later this month, I'm going to say to her, okay, I've had these for a long time. What can you and I do together so I can get better? So to have her tell me, but I think for me, the message is you don't just slap them on your head and everything's fine. For some people, with Marlene, boom, she really experienced a change right away. And I've heard those stories from other people. And then you hear from some people, my experience was suddenly it was the ones and zeros coming into my ear, not analog sound. And it was difficult. And I hired somebody to help me drill and so forth and so on. So everybody's experience, I think, is different. But I think the one thing I'm hearing with the 4 of us is we wouldn't go back, that the technology for us, because our hearing was so bad, right? That this was a lifesaver for us.
I received my cochlear implant 30 years ago, and it's a lot different now. And I could hear people's voices, but I couldn't identify objects. I'll give you an example. I was in my kitchen and there's a water bucket for the dog, and he was in there. And I kept hearing this tapping sound. I said, Al, try to figure where it's coming. And I couldn't figure it out. So I looked at the dog, and he was drinking out of his water bucket, and his license was going against the stainless steel pan making that sound. You see?
I had almost as good a reaction as Marlene at my activation. But someone asked me a while later, what was the first thing you heard, understood? And I said, the direction blinker on the car. I didn't realize that it actually made that much noise because I hadn't heard it in so long. It's quite an experience as you're first learning to live with a cochlear implant. The number of things that you notice, you know, the motor on the refrigerator or the water in the sink. I mean, I turned on the faucet and it sounded like Niagara Falls. Still, you do have to adjust. And I think with your Pete, maybe if you had those kids around all the time, your brain would probably adjust to that because it does take a while. I know, they talk so fast and so high pitched. Ours are not quite that young anymore, but they still talk fast.
It is, this, what you're hearing here, how your life changes, the refrigerators, the faucet. For me, the one that I remember, other than walking on snow and hearing the crunch, was, I was driving at the time I had the first implant. I was temporarily living in Cornell, New York, and I'd been up here. I can't tell you why, probably for sanity purposes, but I was driving home alone in the car at night in the winter, and it was snowing. And I'm hearing this sound, and I didn't know what it was. It was kind of a rhythmic sound. Then I realized I was hearing the snowflakes on the windshield. And so there I am on I-390 South, listening to this. I had tears running down my face. I mean, this was just, it was beyond belief that I could hear.
I have heard so many positive things about cochlear implants. The only question I have is how long before activation? There was a girl from my church who went through a cochlear implant. And she said the time between the surgery and the activation was very, very difficult. I don't know if this is just her experience or a normal experience.
For me, it was 4 weeks, and I had hearing aids prior to this, and they let me keep my one hearing aid in with the dead ear on the side. And that was.
So you could hear out of one ear.
Yes. Now, if you didn't have hearing aids in that ear, I imagine it might be very difficult. But it's still worth it. Some doctors do it 4 weeks. The surgeon I had was relatively new to this area, and she has left since. But she came from California where she had a practice, and she said she had activated someone as soon as 1 week after. I think the reason they wait 3 or 4 weeks is because of some swelling. There isn't much pain at all. To Tylenol. That's it. So each doctor is probably a little different.
Thank you.
I was prescribed some heavy duty drugs for recovery. And like, I took 2 Tylenol the first day just because I thought I would be preemptive with taking the Tylenol before I had pain. That was it. I didn't need to take anything else. And it really was very painless for me. And since I had 0 hearing in my right ear, it was not difficult to go through the 3 weeks. It's just that I had a bandage on that ear. Yeah, that was okay.
One thing that might be valuable to say is that I learned through a friend that the time that you have been hard of hearing sometimes affects your candidacy. A friend came to me because her husband has single-sided deafness and he has struggled for years. So he went to my audiologist and was tested. And she said, because you have had hearing loss for 30 years, your auditory nerve may be so weak. And in the testing, that was what she found. She did put him in a crossover system, and it's worked beautifully. His wife texted me and said, John heard crinkling paper for the first time in 30 years. Still, there are some alternatives, but talk to your audiologist and they should tell you that the length of time sometimes is a deterrent, but don't let it stop you.
In 1993, I think I waited 3 to 4 weeks before they set me up. In 2012, I believe it was 2 weeks. But then you're mapped and you go home. In the 93, I waited a month and I came back in. And then you're mapped the second time, you go home a month. And you come in the third time and you're mapped the last time. And each time you make changes and then you go out and live. And the same thing happened the second time. And that's the way it is.
Fine. Same thing, 4 weeks. I didn't mind the month of not hearing. I was kind of in a state of bliss. I did a lot of reading. I hadn't heard much anyway, so this wasn't a huge lifestyle change.
Two quick questions. Meniere's disease, does it often lead to hearing loss? And the second question, what is the maintenance of all this? Like, I go periodically to get my hearing aids checked, et cetera. What is your plan for maintenance?
I believe Meniere's disease will take your hearing away. It did with mine. And it was a progressive. It wasn't overnight. It was slowly. And it was horrible. At the end, I was hearing at 120 decibels. And I used every device. I had a management job and I used infrared. And after a while, I just couldn't use anything. And when you talk to people over the phone, I had to have a TTY and it was spelled, our conversations were spelled out. And I asked somebody to do something. And if you're hearing, you can hear over the phone whether that person likes the idea or not. You lose that effect. So it's not good. So a deaf person could never do what I did. I don't care what they say.
From my experience, Meniere's often causes hearing loss, and the way it was explained to me is that the fluid builds up in this sac and eventually it explodes, and that's what causes your dizziness. And every time that happens, some damage is done to nerves or whatever, and so your hearing is lessened. So for me, the worst part was the vertigo. I would have done anything to get rid of the vertigo. As far as cleaning, they give you a dryer and I put it in that every night. It runs for 8 hours and keeps the moisture level down in that. And there are tools just like there are with hearing aids, a little brush and well, you can clean it out with, there's a spray liquid to clean the outside of the mold and the ear hooks. So, and just like with hearing aids, everyday maintenance is important, as well as the mapping Al was talking about. When you get hearing aids, you go back several times until things are the way you want them, and it does take a while. It didn't take a year for me, but 3 or 4 months.
I go to my audiologist, the person who does my mapping, and she checks me once a year. Now, at some time, I may have to increase that, but so far, once a year has been fine.
The mapping is the tinkering with the software. That's really a big thing. And particularly, I think if you're having challenges, that's when you can say to the audiologist, how can I get more out of these devices? What should I be doing? So the maintenance though, I have on my calendar every 6 months to change the mic cover or something. I don't know. I've never done it. I mean, I'm lazy. And when I go to the audiologist, they look at the stuff, it's fine, nothing needs changing. So there's not a lot of work involved. And the dryer situation, that's key, like it is for hearing aids, that the moisture needs to be drained out of that. So,
Pete? Marcia Senges sent a chat question. Does anybody have any experience to compare between disposable and rechargeable batteries?
I'll answer that because I do. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. But I do. Right now I'm wearing these Kanzo ones, they're called. And they have disposable batteries. Boy, is that a nuisance. The reason this is one of my backup pairs, because I lost a processor before Christmas. I was on my back steps down to the basement in this old house we own. And my spouse had hung, it's not her fault, but I did this. But anyway, there was a bag of plastic bags, Wegmans plastic bags, hanging from a hook. And I walked by it and bumped this, and the processor fell off. So here I was, I knew exactly where I was when it fell off. And I have to have spent 8 hours or more looking for this thing. New Year's Eve, a friend of mine was down there with nobody could find it. So I got another one coming. But at any rate, I personally like rechargeables. You're not littering the environment every day and a half when your batteries are done. You don't have the misfortune of being out somewhere and forgetting to stuff a pack of batteries in your pocket. So, but I can't, I'm a Cochlear America's wearer too. And I imagine other people might feel differently, but I really love the rechargeable convenience. It's just a nice way to go.
Guys, we've got 4 minutes, about 4 minutes.
My rechargeable battery is good for 16 to 20 hours, whatever is happening in my world. In my purse, I keep the disposable batteries and the little screwdriver, so I keep, if it dies, I can put in the disposable.
I do the same.
I also do the same. Incidentally, CI, Cochlear Corporation, under Medicare Part B, paid for both by rechargeable batteries, $250 a piece. And they also pay for rechargeable and disposable, but you work to a different company. Call them and they'll tell you.
Charlie, thank you. Do I see a hand back there? No. We really appreciate your being here. I hope this was helpful. The panels, terrific, aren't they? I mean, they're just, I'll do an announcement, kind of a marketing thing. We have a cochlear implant group here of the Rochester chapter of Hearing Loss Association. We have been meeting 3 times a year, although next year it'll be 4 times a year. We meet in the evening, looking out to the first half of 2024. We will be meeting the third, I'm looking at Sue Miller because she's my reality check, the third Tuesday of February at 7 p.m. We run 7 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We stop at 8:30. So people can get on with their lives. And then in May, it is the Wednesday. It's the third, is it the third Wednesday of May? It's right after the annual dinner. So if we know when the annual dinner is, it's the next night. So again, 7 p.m. to 8:30. If you're interested in joining this, there was information at the website, and there's a Gmail account that I set up called Cochlear Implant Group at gmail.com. If you write me there, if you want to be on the list, that finds out about these meetings, I'll put you on. And then 3 times or 4 times a year, you'll hear from us about what the next meeting is. The one in February, meeting in February will feature a woman from Advanced Bionics talking to us about their product. So I think Charlie, I think we're bumping up against 1 o'clock. We'd like to thank the captioner who did a really great job. We appreciate the help. And for all of you, Happy New Year and travel safe.